Up next, Authentically Detroit sits down with lawyer, union organizer, actor, father, business owner, and now candidate for the U.S. Senate, Hill Harper. But first, this week hot take from Bridge Detroit featuring Anthony Eid of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Redistricting maps give GOP a fighting chance and boosts Detroit's clout. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages. Hey, everybody, it's Orlando Bailey with the Authentically Detroit podcast, and we are so excited to announce our new book club. We hope you join us. Our first selection this year is Black AF History, the Unwhitewashed Story of America, and that is by Michael Harriot. We will be having our first book club conversation on February 26th. That's a Monday, and that will be at 4 p.m. at Next Chapter Books. You can go to Next Chapter Books to pick up your copy of the book at a discount. We hope to see you there. Register at www.authenticallydet.com. Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Cass Corridor at the WDET studios. We are a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Gibbons-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Donna and I have a packed house in the studio today. We have the honor and pleasure of welcoming lawyer, union organizer, actor, father, and business owner Hill Harper to discuss his run for the U.S. Senate. We also have Anthony Eid from the Michigan Redistricting Commission here with us to talk about how redistricting will impact Detroit voters. Welcome to Authentically Detroit, Anthony and Hill.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Since there's a big crowd, let's hear some noise. Live studio audience.
Makeshift
That's
studio.
right.
Yes, people travel in packs today.
This is
Listen, it's Monday and it's a sunny one, but how is the blessed day finding everyone? Donna, how are you?
I'm good. You know, I had 4 days with grandchildren. We had a full
You
house.
all right, Granny?
I'm all right, but I'm tired. I'm telling you, youth is for the young. I can't do this anymore. Anyway, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Anthony, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I feel right at home, actually. It's funny. I used to live in this building when I was a RA at University Tower.
Was it flooding back then?
Oh, it definitely was flooding back then as well. So some things never change.
Yeah. Well, welcome home. Welcome home. Hill Harper.
Yes.
Welcome to Authentically Detroit.
It is amazing to be here.
How's the day finding you?
Day's great. You know, this morning, went over to an MLK prayer breakfast celebration in Hamtramck at the high school there, and had an amazing turnout. You know, Hamtramck is such an amazing place.
Yeah.
You know, 2 square miles of diversity.
Of culture.
Diversity, and it's just a wonderful place. And the kids did, I gave a keynote, but the kids did a whole performance. It was called they were doing almost like a talent show. Mm-hmm. It was very, very good. It was Hamtramck's Got Talent. That's what it was.
Did you do talent shows when you were coming up?
A couple. Air band.
Did you win?
I was a really good, I had a championship air band.
Okay.
I had a championship air band in high school. We were big. We were good. I was the lead singer, and it was a very good.
Oh, wow.
It was a very good band. It was a very good band.
Has anyone asked you to sing in any of your interviews yet?
Nobody wants me to sing in any interview I ever do.
Well, it was a very good band, but the singing was not
That's
great.
why it was an air band. That's why it was an air band.
All right, y'all, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. So for Hot Takes, redistricting maps give GOP a fighting chance and boost Detroit's clout. Redrawn Michigan legislative districts under consideration by a citizens panel could increase the number of Detroiters in the legislature, but potentially jeopardize Democratic control of the House, a Bridge, Michigan analysis found. Following a federal court order to redraw 13 House and Senate districts, Michigan's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, try saying that five times twice, is revising the boundaries that help give Democrats unified control of state government Parliament, the House, Senate, and Governor's office in 40 years. The panel is now considering 6 new House map configurations aimed at fixing 7 maps thrown out by the court. A bridge analysis of recent voting trends found that modified districts all still lean Democratic, but some by significantly smaller margins. And at least one proposed new district could be a toss-up with Republicans. Democrats won a 56-54 edge in the House in 2022, so losing one seat could affect control of the chamber. Jamie Rowe, a Republican consultant from Macomb County, said the proposed maps hurt Democrats worse. It makes their job of keeping the majority harder, said Rowe, who helped draw legislative maps for Republicans in 2011 when districts were still decided by politicians. The latest maps are the result of a lawsuit from Detroit voters who contended the old districts diluted their vote by extending from the city far into the suburbs. The proposed drafts remedy that by generally clustering districts in the city, creating the possibility of a more African-American representation in the legislature, which fell to 17 total in 2022 from 20 in 2020. Under the old maps, just one Metro Detroit district had more than 60% African-American voters. Under the proposed maps, districts would have as many as 96% African-American residents. And we got Anthony Eid here, who is on the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Donna, what say you?
Well, first of all, I think that this idea of asking a Republican pollster what the likely impact of this is kind of a bad idea. I would rather hear from a Democratic pollster because the Republicans are the ones who gerrymandered our state. And now they are trying to come across even as heroes, having funded this lawsuit. It was not funded by, it was funded by the Federalist Society. And the real intent is to try to dismantle the gains that we've had. So I think it's important for us to put everything in the
gains
context
that Democrats have had.
And black people
Gotcha.
because I mean, Democrats, the Republicans were the ones who were trying to disqualify our votes in 2020.
Yeah.
So you can't be my friend today.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not pro everything Democrat, but I'm certainly not trying to listen to folks who remember what they did at the Huntington Place? You were there.
I was there.
So I think it's important for us to really look at these things in the context of what makes sense for Detroiters.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about Democrats versus Republicans, but I think it's as much a turnout game as it is a Democrat and Republican constituency game. And I'm happy to have Hill Harper here because a big issue is that we expect people to turn out because they fit certain categories or they've traditionally voted a certain way. But if you have great candidates who are running on issues that mobilize voters, you're going to see change in either direction. So I'm not as worried as some people think I should be. I think that we need all of our candidates, whether they are running in Detroit or anywhere else across the state, to be running on issues that are addressing the majority of the city's needs and not running on just party identification. So at any rate, my understanding, and I'm going to throw this back to Anthony, is that of the maps, I'm on the board of Voters Not Politicians, and they sent me an analysis, and it looks like of the maps, there's only one map, the Motown map, that seems to pass all of the, analysis in terms of meeting the civil rights obligations. Is that your understanding of this, Anthony?
We have a few that our legal team has told us that comply with the VRA. Of that, Motown Sound is one of them.
Voting Rights Act, everybody. Alphabet soup, getting ready to happen.
Rights Act. But I think, much of what you said and much of what was in that Bridge article is accurate. We have a number of draft maps out for the public to speak on right now, 10 in total, 10 draft maps that we need the citizens of Detroit and the people of Michigan to come out and let us as a commission know which configuration out of these 10 is the most preferable for their communities.
Anthony, explain that process, right? Because there is right now happening a round of public engagement. Some people know, a lot of people don't know about it. So what was the process like drawing these maps, and how are you engaging the public?
It's been a very long process. We first went and did this about 2 years ago, back in 2021, to have maps be out there in time for the 2022 election. And the commission was able to accomplish that. We passed maps that you spoke about earlier, and they were used in the 2022 election. Then the commission Unfortunately, we got sued by everybody, Republicans, Democrats working with Republicans. It's been a very interesting time. And we just had this federal court case where the court found that we used race too much in drawing the maps. Now, they did not find that we violated the Voting Rights Act, which is what a lot of people have been saying, but that is not what the court found. But they did find that we violated the 14th Amendment by using race too much. That was the court's opinion. So the commission now, we're complying with that opinion and redrawing the districts that the court said that we have to draw while waiting for the potential of an appeal going forward. So we started drawing maps at the end of January, and we have these 10 draft maps that have been created for the public to comment on. Now, we had a town hall meeting last Thursday. It was virtually held over Zoom from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that was the public's chance to come out virtually and let us know really two things. One, which of these 10 maps do you like best? And two, just a more general voice on what is the public's community of interest. Where do different citizens feel like their communities are located, whether it be through a cultural response, a economic response, just what makes the community for every single person. And that could be different for every person because community means a whole lot of things to different people. I know myself, I consider myself a part of a whole bunch of different communities, whether it be the Detroit community because I live here, or the Middle Eastern community, or the Chaldean community. There are a lot of communities that we as Michiganders find ourselves in.
I just want to say, we know the 14th Amendment was about black rights, right? And we know that it was granting black people the right to vote, very specifically. And we also know that the Voting Rights Act was also about granting black people rights very specifically. So the specific community of interest of black people is the one that it appeared from all of the conversation I heard. The Michigan Independent Redistricting Commission was trying to dilute to ensure that they were not packing and that black people were not overly represented. And you had groups like the NAACP, the UAW, and others who put forth alternative maps, ACLU rather, that put forth alternative maps. And my understanding is that you threw those maps out because you could not prove that they were not drawn with race in mind, not based on any the map composition and whether or not the map composition was correct, but based on your suspicion or your belief that there's no evidence that race was not used as a consideration. But we know race was used as a consideration in the drawing of the original map. So I just want to throw out that concern. The other thing is that Voters Not Politicians evaluated the maps, and they found that the Motown Sound map was the only map that passed the equal protection test and the Braden assessment of the VRA compliance. And so it is our position, and certainly mine, that this is the map that we should really look at going for. In my day job, I am the president and CEO of Eastside Community Network, focused on the Eastside of Detroit. And my understanding also is that these maps will have a significant impact on the Eastside of Detroit. So can you comment on all of those things I said? I know I said a lot, but these are concerns that I think a lot of us have, that race is either an issue or it's not an issue. It's something that I understand you cannot specifically try to reduce or dilute the black vote, but certainly can you explain the rationale for throwing out the maps, first of all? I guess that's the first thing.
Well, first off, I agree with much of what you said. And I think we're on the same side here in wanting to create maps that truly represent the community, that give an equal share of power to Detroit and an equal share of power to minorities. They comply with the Voting Rights Act,
yes, which was specifically designed for black people. I don't want to be grouped in minorities, because many people that are considered minorities had the right to vote. Black people did not. And so I think it's important that we're very specific about the issues here. And when you guys were deliberating around the table, you weren't talking about Asians or Chaldeans. You were talking about black voters and how to avoid packing black voters. So if we can stay on that logic, I think that would be helpful.
Well, and that's kind of exactly what we need to hear from the public. That's why we have these meetings coming up. We have one on Wednesday, February 21st at the Greater Grace Temple off of 7 Mile Road. We're going to be there from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then the next day on Thursday,
Ooh, that's a
February
long day.
22nd. Yeah, but we got to hear from people.
Yeah.
You know,
The
we
next one
need
is on the 22nd.
It's the next day, Thursday. This Thursday, the 22nd. That's going to be at 2nd Ebenezer off of DeQuinder. Both.
Y'all come out. Y'all
Yeah.
get out
We
to
do
see
want-
that.
We
and
want
to
people
comment.
out. But you're saying that this is what you want to hear from the public. So are you saying that hearing from what these assessments from voters, not politicians, and their review of the map data is not something that
Should be
you
taken
think
into
should be
consideration.
taken into
Yeah.
consideration? Because, again, they found Motown Sound was the only map in compliance with both the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment Equal Protection.
You know, I can't speak for all of the commissioners, but I know for me personally, I do take those kind of metrics into effect. I'm kind of a, more of a data and evidence-based person. So any sort of professional analysis, whether it be from, the different advocacy groups around our state or universities around our state, that's something that the commissioners read. But
Now-
to go along with that, we need the public input because we have this ranked list of constitutional criteria. And the third one is communities of interest. It goes Voting Rights Act, contiguity, voting rights, communities of interest, and then political fairness. And then after political fairness, you get into some of the more quote unquote traditional redistricting criteria that have been used in the past. Things like city, township, county lines, compactness, and things of that sort that have been used in the past in order to gerrymander for a political.
Does the commission
gain.
have a public engagement budget? Like, how are y'all getting the word out? I mean, some of these meetings have been attended very sparsely. Like, what's that process?
Yeah, I mean, we're there. All of our meetings have been in public. We have public comment before every single meeting. We've had some meetings with strong attendance, some meetings with not as strong attendance.
So is there a budget that you guys have to get the word out? Is there a number that you guys are working from to get the word out to folks, especially in communities like Detroit?
We have a whole budget that's set by the Michigan Constitution, and part of that budget is used for things like these meetings, public engagement. We have a public comment portal where people can comment online if they can't make it in person. We have various accessibility features, such as a sign language interpreter.
Nice.
We have different language translators for people that might not speak English that want to come through. And if people can't make it, you said it's going to be a long day earlier, and it is, but that's by design because some people work day jobs, some people work graveyard jobs, and we need to hear from everybody, especially the citizens of
we
Detroit.
have about 3 minutes left in this segment. I want you to talk about some of the tension around the timetable for this because this decision came at the end of last year. You guys are hard at work. When does this need to be wrapped up?
It's going to be wrapped up by the end of the month. We're going to hear from what the people of Detroit have to say this week. And then the commission from there will make edits to the maps based on the public input that we hear this week. And before March 1st, we will vote on a final product.
Yeah.
Now, that vote has a couple things. It needs to be voted on by 2 commissioners that identify as Republicans, 2 that identify as Democrats, 2 that identify as independents, and then 1 more to get majority. And then from there, after we adopt a map, it is in the court's hands. So the court appointed a special master to review our map. That special master will review it, give it an assessment to see how well it complies with all of the regulations. And then the court will decide to either use our map or they appointed a different special master and they're also drawing a map. So it's either going to be the map the commission votes on or the special master's map. And that is, that's not in our hands. That's in the court's hands at this point. But it is certainly our hope that they choose the commission's map. Yeah. And that's why it's so important that we hear from the citizens of Detroit on these 10 plans, Motown Sound being one of them. But there's 9 other ones as well. And, we need to hear what the folks like and go from there.
I'm just going to be really honest. It's very complex to expect people. The voter turnout and voter engagement in Detroit is already depressed because for so many reasons. And so, for people who are sitting around the table, and I'm such a strong supporter of the Michigan Independent Redistricting Commission, so much so that I'm now on the board of Volunteers Not Politicians. We participated our organization in helping to voters
Voters, not politicians, not volunteers.
Oh my goodness! It's been a
your
long, long
I got
day.
your back, Donna.
Okay, voters, not politicians. I'm on the, but I think we were very active in helping to get out communities of interest. I must say that a lot of the people who were very concerned in the first place, many of whom participated in the lawsuit, were also very active in helping to draft some of the maps that you guys would not consider. And those are Detroiters, and those are Detroit interests that you decided not to take. And so putting the burden on people who may not understand these issues to kind of disenfranchise the input or just negate the input of their chosen representatives in a lot of instances is kind of disappointing to me, because we could have gotten someplace a lot faster if you had at least evaluated those in addition to the 10 that you came up with. And, if there's evidence that there was racial bias in the drafting of the maps that you were shared, I think that's one thing. But if there's not evidence of racial bias, to say, well, I don't know that there's not racial bias, just feels really weird to me. And so I think right now my concern is that people work, people don't have great transportation. We have a lot of low-income people and people who really struggle to understand maps like myself, having a very short period of time to provide meaningful input to a very complex process. And I think that there's other ways to engage that, short of saying, okay, we want to be politicians, but also, there's some respected institutions that have weighed in.
Anthony, can you give the public the dates and times of these meetings this week one more time?
Yes, we're going to be at the Greater Grace Temple, 23500 West 7 Mile Road on Wednesday, February 21st.
Y'all know where that's at. That's Bishop Ellis and them, y'all.
It is. Bishop
West
Charles
side.
Ellis III, West Side.
Yeah.
We're going to be there from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then the very next day, on Thursday, February 22nd, we're going to be at 2nd Ebenezer, 14601 DeQuinder Street.
All right, that's Bishop Van and them, y'all. Y'all know it.
Yep,
Anthony,
Bishop
thank you
Van.
so much for being here. We hope that whatever comes of this process, that it is fair and equitable, especially for Black Detroiters. Thank you for coming on.
That's what we're trying to do. There is no perfect process, but I think we certainly believe that the current process is leaps and bounds better for equity and for fairness than the politicians drawing the maps.
We agree there. Thank you for coming on. Listen, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Senate candidate Hill Harper. Keep it locked.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the Neighborhood Tech Hub, and more. Members who are residents of the East Side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Welcome back to Authentically Detroit. We are here with Senate candidate Hill Harper. Hill Harper is a lawyer, union organizer, actor, and single father who owns a well-known coffee shop in Detroit. He's not a politician, but he's running for U.S. Senate anyway to ensure every single Michigander has economic security and real representation focused on the people, not lobbyists or wealthy donors. Raised in the Midwest by two doctors, Hill learned early on the importance of public service and that the purpose of life was to make life better for everyone. Throughout his life, whether on the campus of Harvard Law School or on the set of The Good Doctor, Hill Harper always kept alive that passion for service. It took him to Iowa and then across the country as he campaigned as a top surrogate for his law school classmate, President Barack Obama. That passion for service led him to sit on President Obama's cancer panel to write several best-selling books aimed at empowering marginalized young people and to establish a charitable foundation organization that helps young people achieve their dreams through scholarships, mentorships, and grants. Now, Hill is running for the U.S. Senate because he believes the depth of the challenges facing our nation demands independence over conformity and service over personal ambition. Hill Harper, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's great to be here in studio.
Yes.
It's great.
good.
It's great to have you. I just have to say this. I have to throw this out there. When I first heard you were running, and I read a press clipping, and I thought he is running as the same old Democrat, doing the same, making the same old arguments. And then I actually listened to you speak, and you're running as a progressive Senate candidate, right?
Yes, very, very different. I'm not running as the status quo or the establishment by any stretch of the imagination. And you know, folks are angry, and folks are disillusioned. They're upset. I mean, you guys just talked about the lack of turnout. You know, if we looked at the data from the last primary that didn't have a president at the top of the ticket, it was less than 10% in the black community.
Yeah.
You know, less than 10% turnout. And it's striking how many folks have checked out of the process in many ways. And we have to get them back, you know, and you know why? At least the ones I'm talking to, I've gone through all 83 counties. I've gone across the state. They're checking out because they've never gotten a return on the investment that is their vote.
Exactly.
And so that's why. So it's like, what? You know.
So how do you see your role in getting people to come out?
Well, it's literally person to person. You have to, and this is why I love Voters Not Politicians. This is about engaging people and letting them know exactly what they're voting for, and also what they're going to get in return if they vote for me. I mean, that's the thing, you know, and so I try to make it as plain as possible. You know, when I went to Harvard Law School, my constitutional law professor would hammer us about how the U.S. Senate is the most important body in all of politics. The judicial branch rules on the constitutionality of what the Senate passes. The executive branch either vetoes or signs into the law what the Senate passes. The House of Representatives, our 13 members, send along a bill to the Senate. The Senate can change it, change the name, take everything out, completely change it. So if you're very reductive, those 100 folks sitting around that table decide where the $6.2 trillion annual federal budget goes and where those resources head. And we don't have any representation of anyone fighting to get resources for us. And when I say us, I'm talking about a big us, not just black us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm talking about people who do not have lobbyists, people who are not represented by special interest groups, and people who do not have corporate PACs. And that is the vast majority of people, and that's why the vast majority of people have checked out of the process, because the only real decision most establishment status quo politicians are making from both parties have to do with special interest money and big donors.
Yes, I'm round of applause, okay? But here's the thing. I'm really excited about this because, you know, it's about time. And you talked about being willing to use the Senate seat to really shake things up.
That's right.
And not to be somebody who's going along to getting along. You know, I think sometimes we measure diplomacy more than we measure justice. And I think justice has to come first. But I was looking at the list of priorities.
Wait, that was, say that again. That was good. That was good. We measure diplomacy more than we measure justice. Because one of the things that I find out that I'm finding in conversations where there is dissent, in conversations where there is pushback, we are forced to hear about being civil, and like we have to be civilized about it.
You know who wants civility? The slave owner. You know who wants civility? The boss.
That's right.
Civility favors the powerful.
Yeah.
Civility says your voice, your needs don't matter. Just go along to get along. And so I'm not unnecessarily uncivil all the time, but I think it's important to speak on behalf of people who feel ignored, who feel invisible, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's anger, and then we blame them. And I say this again because I say it often, that the refrain, your ancestors died for the right to vote. Our ancestors died for rights. Our ancestors died for power and access and opportunity and justice. They did not die for the process of voting.
That's right.
When voting does not deliver the kinds of results that produce those things.
That's exactly.
There was a time when people thought that. But I want to look at your list of priorities real quickly, because you talked about the Senate budget. And I see climate justice. I'm down with that. Yes. Jobs and economic dignity. Yes. In the filibuster. Heck yeah.
Yes.
universal health care, yes. Where's housing?
Housing's right there. And so for me, affordable housing is one of my top things. I'm not sure which list that could be on the
From
website.
the
That
website?
could be, there's so many. That could be the website. There's so many issues that you can't list them all, and you have to talk about top lines. But so, healthcare, number one cause of personal bankruptcy, healthcare. 1/3 of all GoFundMe's healthcare related. GoFundMe's not a health plan. We have to solve the healthcare crisis. We get that. We go to then you skip to talk about public safety. You didn't mention that. That's a big thing for me.
Oh, we got a lot of stuff.
We got so
mention.
many things. But where affordable housing comes through, because affordable housing runs through everything, including the democratic voting process that we've been talking about. And I'll tell you how this came like a sledgehammer to me through our signature process. So we just turned in our signatures on Friday. It's fantastic. It's a huge.
You're going to be on the ballot. Congratulations.
On the ballot. This is, getting 15,000 registered voter signatures is no easy feat. It's no easy task. And we collected over 30,000 plus signatures. But something glaring started to stick out to all of us on the campaign when we started validating them. And listen to this. In the zip codes where the predominance of people are at or below an already very too low set poverty line, there is so much housing fragility and insecurity that folks move so many times that their signatures aren't actually valid with regards to their address anymore, because they've moved 2-3 times since they got that driver's license, since they were registered to vote. And so what's happening is very clear to me. Their voting information from the Secretary of State, they never see it. They never get it because they've moved 3-4 times. Now, if you live in Birmingham, West Bloomfield, where there's a lot of housing security, people own their homes for 5, 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years, they're getting their voting information. They're getting their polling location. They're told that there's a primary August 6th. They're told that there's 40 days of absentee voting and you can, for no cause, request an absentee ballot. They're told that there's 9 days in-person voting. The information is not being disseminated. And then you peel back another layer. The Democratic Party historically only shows up in these so-called marginalized communities in October, because they don't really want those folks picking the winner of the primary, so they don't do any GOTV or get out the vote work for the primary, but they come in October spending millions of dollars saying, oh my God, you have to save the country, you have to save us, Michigan's a red state until black people vote, you have to go, and that's in October when they've already picked the candidates.
Yeah.
Well, we've already picked the presidential candidates already, right?
That's right.
So we're living in a democracy, and we already know who's going to be president. I'm sorry. I
want to go back to the point on housing, because what you have described is a real transient population, and all of that is linked to and rooted in affordability.
That's right.
What's your stance on fixing that problem?
So I had a meeting with a guy who just built 240 so-called affordable housing units in Pontiac, because I really wanted to understand how do we start to solve this.
That's like Glenn Wilson.
And he said, Hertz. His name is Hertz.
Okay.
His father was Eminem's lawyer, Howard Hertz, I believe. So, fun fact. And so he said, Hill, the system is so inefficient that what I have to do is I have to take a tax credit. I have to hire lawyers and mergers and acquisitions people and all these folks, have them create a deal to sell my credits on a market for a discount, and then take that money, bring it back, try to package that into another deal with the banks to use as a down payment to get a loan to ultimately build. He said it takes 2 years more than it should, and it costs double what it should, and I could have built significantly with direct investment. And so when we talk about the efficiency of just throwing around these tax credits, tax breaks, trying to solve a problem, we should be directly solving the problem, not these indirect things that actually help lawyers, banks, mergers folks, and even developers make more money.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know we got to move on, but just the HUD standard of affordability, which does not work.
It doesn't work
for poor people in the city of Detroit. Do you have any inclination of how you will want to go about helping to change that or influence changing that standard?
Well, the number one thing that we have to change is that as soon as you start receiving more money, then you hit a different category and they start charging you more, right? And so the idea of putting the burden on the person who can afford it the least seems to run through so much of our politics.
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about another issue around affordability. In addition to cost, in addition to 80% of the AMI in Detroit is higher than the average income in Detroit.
Yes.
I think the AMI is about 60,000, something like that.
That's right.
And the AMI is about 32,000, and 80% of 60,000 is more than 32,000.
Yes.
And so we're building housing that we call affordable that Detroiters can't afford.
That's right.
And then when we subsidize that housing, it's usually studio apartments or
It's
one-bedroom apartments.
micro studios.
So we're not building family housing, and we're not building for stability. We're taking these dollars that used to be used and directed in low-income neighborhoods, and we have redirected them to downtown developments where we are, through inclusionary housing policies, putting them in high-rises that are $4,000 a month, and you can live here for $1,000 a month in our studio, and that's what we consider to be economic inclusion.
Right.
And so, how do we look at the fact that first of all, some people will never be able to pay rent because they're disabled, they're senior citizens, and they're never going to have much income. How do we look at a real fair housing policy? What would that look like to you?
Well, for me, it doesn't just stop at housing. It also stops at just economic development from a neighborhood perspective. And one thing that I've been talking about a lot is this idea that I say no better deal, meaning if you live in that zip code, you can't offer a better deal to anyone outside of that zip code for development or anything than you offer the individual who is there. Give you an example. You go to the corner of, I have to, when I get off I-75 to go home, I get off 75, go up, I get to the corner of Oakland and Owen Streets. Now, North End, Detroit, used to be vibrant, businesses, etc. Now, you're at that corner. You have a bombed out, boarded up building to the left. You have a vacant lot where there used to be a business there. To your right, you have Irene's Market and Eli's Produce and faded letters and a tree growing up through that building. Then across the street, of course, you have your liquor store where all you can buy are Funyuns, Faygo, Werner, or Hennessy through 3 inches of plexiglass. There ain't no fresh produce. Eli's Produce is not there anymore, and we're acting as if this is okay. Now, fast forward to the future. What happens in those communities, or what's been happening, is that, sweetheart deal to a developer, because if you try to open up, if you're a young entrepreneur who lives right there, you say, you know what? There's no fresh produce. There's just a liquor store. I want to reopen Eli's Produce. You could maybe get a hard money loan for 10 to 15% from a bank. You'd have to redo the building. There is no way you could reopen that and actually stay in business. But what happens if a developer comes, hey, I want to take these 4 straight blocks right there at Oakland and Owen, and I'm going to remake it back into its great glory. They get a tax incentive and a 0-interest loan to do the whole thing. And so what my argument is that I don't want to stop development, but I want to say that if you live in that community, you've been holding down that community, no one can come in and get a better deal than you. So if you're going to offer that to that developer, then across the street, that vacant building that's right there, you need to give that 0-interest loan to that young brother or sister in that neighborhood to redevelop that into housing, into a business on the first floor, housing on top, and ultimately allow people from the community to start owning. Because the other thing we haven't even talked about, if we don't start recirculating dollars within our communities, and to your point, living in a studio for $1,000 a month is not building a community. Right. And so it's not supporting families. And so if we don't actually start creating businesses, jobs, and recirculation in these communities, the housing ultimately won't be there anyway.
So could we use the federal purse to incentivize investment of neighborhoods instead of there?
That's exactly right.
I just wanted no better deal, because I have a friend who has lived in East English Village on the east side of Detroit for 20, 30 years, raised her children there. She's an attorney. She's a board member for a housing development organization. And there was a house that was vacant and owned by the land bank that she was trying to purchase for 2 years. She made a $40,000 offer on this vacant home. And she kept trying to fight and fight and fight. Ultimately, they sold this. They bundled this home in a bunch of other homes, and they sold it for $20,000 to somebody who did not live inside that neighborhood. And this woman, who's been here, good friend of mine, wonderful human being, was like, you know what? I'm ready to leave. She felt violated.
That's
and
exactly what I'm talking about.
She was not unable to whatever, but she wanted to buy this for her children, to keep her family in there. And it feels as though it's like whatever makes economic sense for developers is what we're going to do. But
That's
what
right.
makes economic sense for the folks in the hood is not. What role could the Senate play in stopping that kind of thing?
Well, it's twofold. Number one, we got to get money out of politics. And so Citizens United, the passage of that, 2011, you've seen our democracy literally, the unfettered, unrestricted dollars into our election process has crushed the power and voice of the citizenry. Many people believe that the reaction to the Obama presidency was the Tea Party, and I would suggest to you that that's not true. That's the outward face. The true reaction was Citizens United. It was a group of people saying, you know what, we just saw an example of people coming together to elect a non-establishment candidate to an office. We don't like that. And how do we take their power away? We make money more determinative than people. And that's what's happened with our politics. I mean, we can see it right now. 71% of Michigan Democrats support ceasefire, but I'm the only one of two candidates and the major Senate candidates in the entire country that have called for ceasefire.
Who's
Why?
the other one?
Barbara Lee in California.
All right.
So the point is that you see money making political decisions for that very reason that you just mentioned. The other side of that is folks have to remember the $6.2 trillion, it's your money. It's our money. It's not the government's money, right? And so demanding that, when you say, how do we get those resources, federal dollars back, you shouldn't even be asking that question because they should be coming back because they're your money and it's our money.
Oh, but we need an appropriator. Is that?
We need an appropriator. You need somebody at the table that's willing to stand in the breach and do just like, I'll say his name, just like Joe Manchin did for 47 fossil fuel companies when the debt ceiling issue. Well, you need my vote. Well, I need these two paragraphs. You need my vote. I need these two. Joe, that gives $150 million to 47 fossil fuel companies in West Virginia. It has nothing to do with the debt ceiling. I know, but you need my vote.
One of your favorite people down to give his.
Well, no, I mean, I love this argument, and when
you
do
that, you do that for public education, you do that for people in communities, you do that for the city of Detroit, you do it for Pontiac, you do it for Flint, you do it for Saginaw, you do it for Muskegon Heights, you do it for Kalamazoo, you do it for Battle Creek. You fight for the people who don't have agency or voice, and if we don't have people in there that are doing that, we're going to see the U.S. Senate continue to do what it does, which is make sure that big donors get taken care of time and time again, and that political parties, because remember, the parties benefit from the structure of Citizens United. Why? Because it makes it almost impossible to beat an incumbent.
Yeah. I want to talk about, since we're talking about affordability and economic development, I want to talk about the outsized role that banks and insurance companies play that make it prohibitive for especially people of color, black folks in the city of Detroit, to be able to do any of the things that you're talking about because of how we continue to move the goalposts and redefine risk. When we had the Federal Housing Act come on board and we were supposed to enforce it, banks and insurance companies found a workaround around that. So what does the conversation look like with financial institutions who have an endemic role in marginalizing communities of color?
That's right. So we have spent literally trillions of dollars bailing out banks and major institutions, yet less than 1% of their lending goes to communities of color. Okay? So but if we look at our MDIs, they're minority depository institutions. There used to be about 150 of them. Now we're down to 18. I'm talking about in the country. Now we're down to 18. 67% of their lending goes to communities of color. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say someone should be fighting to make sure $1 trillion or some measure of billions goes to MDIs, and we actually start increasing the numbers of MDIs.
Are you talking about MDIs on the banking side?
Well, you asked about banks.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about
because there are more MDIs than 18. But yeah, keep going.
Well, no, you may be including CDFIs.
I am.
I'm not including CDFIs.
Gotcha.
I'm talking about specifically banks.
Gotcha.
Not CDFIs.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of CDFIs. But so when we talk about that, we want to start increasing the number by investing in them, because we already know they are lending to these communities where the majority banks are not. And part of the stipulations have to be pass through. These dollars can be earmarked for specific communities, and people don't talk about this earmarks. This is like they don't like talk about affirmative action and all that BS. We can get into that, I guess, maybe on another show. But I'm a proud product of affirmative action. I call it affirmative opportunity. All it gives you is an opportunity to compete.
Well,
Let's
talk about
right
that's another show.
Let's take a quick break. We're going to take our last break of the show, and we have much more to talk about. We'll be right back with Hill Harper.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Hey everybody, it's Orlando Bailey with the Authentically Detroit podcast, and we are so excited to announce our new book club. We hope you join us. Our first selection this year is Black AF History, the Unwhitewashed Story of America, and that is by Michael Harriot. We will be having our first book club conversation on February 26th. That's a Monday, and that will be at 4 p.m. at Next Chapter Books. You can go to Next Chapter Books to pick up your copy of the book at a discount. We hope to see you there. Register at www.authenticallydet.com. All right, welcome back to Authentically Detroit. We are live here with Hill Harper, candidate for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Michigan. Donna, go ahead.
Well, listen, we could talk to you literally all day. I'm a political junkie, and this is all great stuff and very passionate about these causes. But you're running for Senate.
Yes.
And you're running against somebody who has better name recognition. Yes. And so I really want you to differentiate yourself for those who listen to our podcast. What's different about Hill Harper?
Okay, well, there's a lot of difference, but let's first just focus on votes, because I think that can be the clearest space to look at. Some votes that would be very different for me versus her. She voted one of two Democrats to vote with Republicans for continued nuclear testing of weapons. I would absolutely oppose that. It's destructive to the environment and it's destructive in so many ways. But that is an example. She voted against student loan debt relief.
So are you completely anti-military?
No.
Okay. Just asking.
I'm about efficiency and spending the public's dollars. Remember, it's the public's dollars. We have a government right now that rubber stamps military spending to the tune of increase it 5-10% every year, rubber stamp it. It's called the NDAA. Okay, and there's I'm not for rubber stamping the spending. I'm for efficiency, and I could run down a few things that I think could help. And I'm also not a big fan of spending billions of dollars in foreign violence.
Go ahead.
And so we can get into that deeper.
No, you were running down
and
the list
understand
of
what
votes.
that is. I was running down the list of votes.
Yeah, go ahead.
But so another vote, like I said, was student loan debt relief. 63% of black wealth goes to paying down student loan debt. If we're going to deal with the wealth gap, we have to deal with the cost of student loan. I don't think student loan debt relief even goes far enough. I think we need quality pre-K through 16 that is not saddling people with debt, particularly from communities where they can afford it the least. We don't want to saddle young people with debt so they can come out of school, be entrepreneurs, create the lives they want, be creative, and do those things. And the fact that we're saddling young people with lifelong debt, particularly from communities that can afford it the least, so their parents, their grandparents are paying into it. I got a guy who works on my campaign who spent $15,000 to his daughter's student loans in 2004, then $200 a month. If you just do the math on that, if he just would have put it in an S&P account, it'd be worth $80,000 today, not to mention the $40,000 he spent. So that's $120,000 wealth loss to that family, and who could afford it the least. So let me keep going. There was the fact that and this is not a huge winning issue in Michigan, but I just have to tell you the truth and tell people who my truth is. I was a national ambassador for the Innocence Project. I am wholeheartedly and fully against the death penalty. My opponent is not.
Thank you for saying that.
So
can we talk about mass incarceration?
We can talk about mass. My last book was called Letters to an Incarcerated Brother. I was part of an organization that wanted to cut our mass incarceration population by 50% by 2030. We are so far off of that, and we're not even close. We're 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's inmates. Where we are, there are so many people. My father worked in a prison doing mental health work. So where we are locking up so many nonviolent drug offenders, so many people with mental health issues. Our prisons and jails have become the number one mental health facilities. These people do not need to be in 8x10 concrete cells with iron bars. They need to be getting mental health and drug treatment services so that they can get out and be a part of the world. Conditional release programs work. But let me just say,
new slavery, right? I mean, it's not new slavery; it's slavery, right?
Yes.
The people who are incarcerated are enslaved, and we buy the food they produce at Kroger, Sam's Club, Costco, wherever we go. And so I think that there's so many dimensions to the injustice that there is an incentive to keep re-enslaving people because they are part of an economic system that is kind of hidden.
That's built on exploitation.
That's right.
But go ahead.
I think that what we should talk about is lived experience. If you want to talk about it, the biggest difference, that's really the biggest difference.
Okay.
People want representatives that represent their lived experience. And so for me, it's a very different lived experience. I grew up, as a black man in America. That's a specific experience. But also, I'm a father of an 8-year-old who just got put out of school on Wednesday because he was, over-energized and acting up. And I believe people want a representative that in the U.S. Senate that understands what it's like to try to raise a school-age child. I'm also a 32-year union member who was elected to the National Board of his union. And I'm a huge union fighter. And the fact that the UAW Region 1A has thrown their support behind me and the people of Region 1A is a massive seismic shift in this campaign. And it's something we haven't even talked about. But for them to say that, and then a lot of the folks from Region 1, et cetera, to have the UAW support, to have the U.S. Postal Service workers support, IATSE in Kent County, their support. So there's a union support movement, labor support building behind me because they know I want to pass the PRO Act. I want to get the NLRB real teeth. I want to give OSHA real teeth. I want to fight. I was 2016. I was the national ambassador for One Fair Wage. We haven't raised the federal minimum wage since 2009. It's been $7.25. It is crazy that we're there. And so people want someone to fight in this way. They want to fight for common sense gun laws. The fact is, our representatives, Democratic representatives, we stick our toe in issues and act like red flag laws are getting the job done. It's not getting the job done. 2 doors up from me, someone was shot in the head and murdered in their house. We just had the anniversary of MSU shooting in Oxford. We need to take on that and the NRA and the gun lobby, and we need people who aren't going to be bought, bossed, or bullied, and I won't be.
I want to talk. Can we park right there for a minute and talk about even the legislation that's passed here in the state of Michigan, which I think is a valiant effort on part of Governor Whitmer, and is going to go a long way toward reducing, I think, mass shootings like the one that happened at Michigan State Universities, where people are buying their guns legally, or parents are buying their children guns legally. But what we have here in the city of Detroit, I don't know of one single gun shop in the city of Detroit proper. People are still able to get weapons, and they're getting them illegally. So the way that we talk about common sense gun laws really negate the issue that is happening in the urban cores. How are we going to fix that without championing police and surveillance?
Oh, very specifically, something that no one talks about, and I don't understand why. See, the NRA and the gun lobby intimidate politicians so much so that you can't talk about any changes in any material way, particularly on the gun side. What do I mean by that? The gun technology has existed for many, many years to make it a single-use weapon. What do I mean by that? You buy it, you are trained or registered in it, and you're the only one that can use it. It stops all gun selling, trafficking, black market, etc., because no one else can use it but you. But the gun lobby will not allow that technology to be implemented in the world of guns. And so until politicians stand up. Technology has evolved and changed so much. And that's why I call them weapons of mass murder, not guns or weapons. I can debate the Second Amendment with anybody. I went to Harvard Law School. I'm good with the Second Amendment. But so when the Second Amendment was written, an arm was something that you'd load. It took it like 3 minutes to reload it, and with a single shot type of weapon. Today's weapons are very different technology, but we're not using the technology for safety.
Can we also talk about the fact that when the Second Amendment was written, black people were enslaved?
Yes.
And these people, the militias, were vigilantes, a lot of times helping to maintain the slave state. And so I think, what is even the purpose? It was not to turn their guns against the president. It was to hold other people in check. And so there's always been this underlying meaning and purpose for the Second Amendment that is not discussed. Now, when the Panthers were showing up with long guns, nobody was saying, yay, that's a Second Amendment thing. How many people have gone to prison holding guns, who were black and brown, who were treated differently because they were black and brown people holding guns? But I also want to talk about the NRA in another way, because the NRA has also intimidated Congress from passing laws that would evaluate crime or gun violence as a mental health crisis.
That's right.
And when you look at, first of all, these lone shooters, it's mental health. When you look at Ethan Crumbley in Michigan, it's mental health. But when you look at a lot of people in the hood, it's mental health too. We just say they have bad families or it's bad culture. But the reality is, if Ethan Crumbley experienced trauma, there's so many kids I work with who experience so much more trauma than he had. Who don't know their parents, who don't have a home, who have been beaten, raped, other kinds of things happening to them. And when they commit crimes, the idea is lock them up, lock them up, lock them up. When Ethan Crumbley killed somebody, they said he should have gotten therapy. How come his parents didn't get him therapy? But when a black kid kills somebody in Detroit, nobody's asking why they didn't get therapy. They say, well, you know what? We're too soft on these kids. We need to be harder on them. We need to be tougher. And let's circle back to your son, right?
That's right.
If you look at school data, just about any school, especially in majority white districts, you will find the disproportionality of suspensions and expulsions of black children, especially black boys, is so significantly greater for the exact same behavior. Acting a little rambunctious in a white boy is just a little boy being a child. But when it's a black boy, he's got to be brought under control. And so I think, when we look at gun violence, when we look at violence, I'm interested in whether or not you are applying, although I know you're running for Senate for all Michiganders, the racialized lens that we have to live within.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm the father of an 8-year-old black boy.
Right.
So, of course, I'm thinking about it all the time. And I want to double click on your point about the mental health piece, because it's not just about the gun. Now, guns and weapons are the number one cause of murder of children today, right? And when that was happening with car accidents, what did we do? Instituted laws that required everyone to have child seats and child protection, et cetera, and it dramatically reduced the death of small children in car accidents. We need to do the same with guns and weapons. But to your point about mental health, my son told me when he was in first grade one day, either after Oxford or MSU, that he didn't want to go to school because he was scared of being shot. Now, it wasn't because I think he really thought someone was coming in there. It was because they do these active shooter trainings. And it's just like, would you take your child at home in your house and be like, get under the cupboard? Someone could be coming. You're not going to traumatize your child in your home. But we are allowing bad policy with inaction on these issues and putting the burden on second graders to get active shooter training because we won't get guns off the street and deal with the problem from the root cause of the issue. And we know there's an economic lens to this. We know there is. And so it's so frustrating is that someone wants to hold up the Second Amendment as if it's more important than a second grader. And it's BS. And when I talk about this, I get very upset about it because I feel like I've been complicit in allowing my son's mental health to get damaged because they're making him jump under a desk or board up a thing where he should feel the safest because he actually spends arguably more time in that school than he does at home. Except, he's sleeping. But we need to deal with these issues. And gun buybacks do work. I want to go back to the point you were making. You look all over the world, a robust gun buyback program is one of the best investments we can make. We're talking about efficient government spending, buying back guns off the street. People who are storing guns and holding and reselling them, they actually like money, want money. And if you have a robust gun buyback program, you can get millions of guns off the street. And the price that society pays for the gun violence of that weapon is a pittance of what we would pay to get them out and off the street, and then stop or change the way the supply is coming out. You have to do them in concert. You can't just say we're changing the supply but keep guns out there in a proliferation, and you're right, trading on the black market. Yeah. No, we got to get them out. But we can, because it works. $800, show up, and people are showing up with like rusted old Winchesters. They're like, is this count? I want to tell you, this is my granddaddy's rusted gun. They're bringing guns out that they never even knew they had, because they're like, I'll take the money, dog.
I'll take the money.
Right?
Listen, we got about 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to get to a topic that is important I know that is important to Donna, but important to me as well, and it's one of the tenets of your campaign, and that is environmental sustainability. First, tell us what you mean by that.
It fundamentally, it means looking with a lens into the future about what public health and individual health looks like for our children and generations to come, and looking at how particularly lower income, black communities, minority communities, immigrant communities have always been hit the hardest and the worst by environmental policy and environmental poisoning. And we're seeing it run rampant in Michigan, all over, so many different ways, and it is crushing our communities and does so consistently. So sustainability, I think, is a catchword or a general catchword that's just about saying it has to be healthy and workable for people to actually thrive. I always talk about, surviving is a low bar. I talk about the Destiny Child song, I'm a Survivor. I'm saying I want us to stop talking about just being survivors. I want us to look at it through the lens of being a thriver. What does that mean? And the environment is a big piece of thriving. And it just doesn't stop with water and the cleanliness of water, or if there's not pollution in the air. It talks about quality of life and the environment that you live in. For instance, let's look at education. And so it's a big catch-all for me. We keep in our communities, and many of our communities, particularly the communities where people are hit the hardest, what do we keep doing with schools? We keep putting what I call lipstick on pigs. We think going into an old, dark, bricked up school and putting on brand new windows is, it's a great school now. No, it's not. It's a poorly designed, dark edifice that's not built for learning. There's a reason why Apple's headquarters are circular and they're all glass with fresh plants inside there and places that people can ideate. That's the reason why most of our top universities look very different and feel very different. You have a different learning experience. Yet we expect our kids, and we're still our teachers, to work in an environment that doesn't even feel comfortable, safe, or inviting. And so why don't we attract great teachers? Because they got to show up and work in a place that's extremely difficult to even keep their mental health correct. We have to invest in the places environmentally, infrastructure, environment, clean air, clean water, all of those base things that create outcomes that we want to see. We can't just give lip service to it and keep putting people in the exact same situation. It's the same thing I say about voting. Listen, if you like what you've been getting, then you should vote for my opponent. Let's be really clear, because she will maintain the status quo. I will not. If you want change, or if you want something different, vote for me. If you like what you mean. And what's the definition of insanity? Continue doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. We do that in almost every area. We do it in education. We do it. We just keep doing it. So that's what I mean. It's a big catch-all for me.
It seems to me, and as Orlando pointed out, I'm very passionate about environmental sustainability on many levels.
Yes.
Many of which you just mentioned. But it seems to me as though everybody can sort of agree here, but then when it comes to the environment or jobs, well, I know that's a polluter, but we've got to be able to pollute somewhere.
5,000 jobs.
And, and that's happened in my community, actually right in my backyard, where they sort of said that's okay, and there's no way to hold them accountable. I think at one point Stellantis had an air quality issue, and they were fined something like $8,000. And that hurt my feelings, But the state said, well, this is all we can do. This is the maximum fine we can assess given this type of violation. The entire area used to be an EPA non-attainment area. And then after we had the wildfires last year, they were able to rig the data and say, well, you know what? Now this area, same exact polluters, is in compliance and it's attaining, which makes it easier for new corporations to come in and pollute. So the EPA has paved the way for more investment. And so it feels like if we're going to have sustainability, we've got to get serious about valuing lives as much as we value the wealth of wealthy people, because that's what it's really about.
I agree, but we also have to point out the false dichotomy that people try to argue. For instance, around Line 5, they try to pit unions against clean energy and try to say, oh, by encapsulating Line 5 and keeping it going, we're going to create 2,000 union jobs, and that's an encapsulation thing, and it's going to be good. No, the simple fact is by ending Line 5 and creating these clean energy jobs that are out there for clean energy infrastructure, you create significantly more jobs. The other point is just cleanup jobs. Folks are talking about, I would completely be against the expansion of Camp Grayling into the hunting preserve that surrounds it. I don't believe my opponent would be against that. And so when we talk about that, Camp Grayling has a massive PFAS, which is a forever chemical poisoning problem. Mm-hmm. It needs to get cleaned up, not just say, you're not expanding, it's benign. It's not benign. There's cleanup. Those jobs should be union jobs being created. The same jobs cleaning up, all the plants in Flint, Stellantis, et cetera, those are jobs to be created. Cleanup jobs are good union jobs as well. We need to clean up the harm we've done and also create new jobs for a clean energy future. I always say if it moves, it's Michigan. Anything about mobility, we should be about here, but it has to be about clean, clear mobility. So we're pointing to the future.
But you have the last question.
Okay.
Go.
I just want to point out a couple things. One of them is that the toxins coming out of the Stellantis plant just behind my building are not from the manufacturer of automobiles. It's for the painting of the automobiles. We use toxic paint still to coat our cars. And it feels as though if the Senate, if the U.S. government decided that we were going to disallow these toxic paints, some of these brilliant people who can go to Mars can figure out how to invent a paint that doesn't kill people. But it's because of our lax standards, and it feels as though those are also new investment opportunities.
That's right.
And
that's exactly
right.
But
in new expansion. So I agree with you. The other thing is one of the risks around all this electric vehicle conversation is what's happening in the Congo, but also where the batteries get manufactured here, there's a lot of waste that's produced, and we're producing new waste in the name of environmental sustainability, and it's happening in places where poor people, black and brown people live, so that we don't really care about those environmental toxins because, look, we're rebuilding the economy, and I agree with you, it's a false dichotomy, but we don't always look at the full impact of decision making.
That's right. But remember, folks think that when someone says clean energy, they just think batteries.
Right.
There is a massive whole rubric of different types of energy that can be created. And also we have to remember innovation and ideation is what we want to encourage, to your point about paints. If it's something that's harmful, the idea of encouraging and investing in people to create new solutions is how we continue to move forward. What the problem we have is politicians are allowing money to make their decisions, and therefore the people who are making money now, what do they want to continue to do? Make sure they continue to make money. And therefore, what are they going to do? They're going to invest and buy politicians to make sure that they continue to reinforce. We're in a world where 28 billionaires own and control the same amount of wealth as the rest of the world's population. 28 people. Mm-hmm. That if that doesn't make someone say, whoa, who's in on that fix? Clearly there's something happened. I mean, I was talking to a guy when I was filling up my car just yesterday because we were doing a lot of driving. It was almost $100 to fill up, my car. And the guy's like, dang, these gas prices. And I said, do you know how much the oil company Exxon and them they make per quarter? He's like, no, how much? I said $200 billion a quarter, all of them. And he's like, well, how come my gas prices keep going up if they're making $100+ billion a quarter? And I said, that's a great question. You should ask your U.S. Senator.
We got to leave it there, y'all. Hill Harper, thank you for coming on. You have to come back.
I will absolutely come back. There's a lot to talk about.
Cool. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com.
Can I send somebody to if somebody's interested in what I have to say, can I have them text a number?
Yeah, go for it.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Take out your phones, 313-942-4455. That's 313-942-4455. Shoot us a text. Sign up for our campaign. We need volunteers. We're building a grassroots movement. Also go to hillharper.com. You can sign up to volunteer. But if you text that number, we are meeting people where they are. And the reason why we started this text number is because we found out that a lot of people from our community, they're not going to websites and they're not downloading apps, but they are texting because texting is their lifeline. And so 313-942-4455. Stay in touch with us. Let's work together. This is a collective operation, and we can do this.
Anthony, Hill, and Donna, it is time for shout-outs. Donna, you got any shout-outs?
Listen, I'm a shout-out Hill because this is the first time I've been excited about a politician running for office in our state, statewide office in a long time. So I'm really excited about the candidacy that you and your courage and the way that you are so knowledgeable and speak truth to power. And
All
Let's
right,
go.
Hill, you got any shout outs?
You know what? I want to shout out my mom.
Hey, mama.
So she lives with us here.
Dr. Hill.
Dr. Marilyn Hill Harper. She was one of the first black female anesthesiologists in the country, and she is just a hero of mine. And the fact that, she's here, I'm part of a sandwich generation. I got a young son with an 8 at his name, and my mom, there's a number on hers that starts with an 8. Also, she doesn't want me to say which number comes after that.
Get in trouble.
But the point is that I wouldn't be here but for her. And she's the one that gives me that courage because she had so much courage. There's a picture of her in when she was a professor at University of California, San Francisco, where she's the only woman and only person of color in the faculty. And how much microaggression she went through, that's when I knew I could handle politics because she's already been through it, and she set it up for us to do this.
All right. Anthony, you got any shout-outs?
Shout out the MICRC Twitter page. It's at redistrictingmi. Follow it if you want to stay informed. You can follow me at Anth Eid, ANTHEID, and hope to see people come out this week.
Cool. I would like to shout out the Authentically Detroit Book Club. Our book club selection this month.
Is it Hill Harper book?
It can be.
Oh,
you know what?
He stuttered on that. He stuttered on that one.
Because we have not selected your book or any of your books yet, but we will. This is our first book club selection. We selected Black AF History by Michael Harriot.
Oh,
it's
wow.
an amazing read. We're going to be meeting up on Monday. What day is that? February the 26 at 4 p.m. at Next Chapter Books. Really funny story about your book. I remember being in high school. I was a high school freshman, and one of my favorite pastimes was to spend the day in Borders. And I spent the day in Borders reading Letters to a Young Brother.
Wow.
I loved it. It gave me such great encouragement and inspiration. I was 14 years old when I read that book. It had just come out. So,
That means a lot.
yeah, but I've been an avid reader for a long time. But Black AF, February the 26th, 4 p.m. at Next Chapter Books on East.
So what do people do? They buy the book somewhere else and then bring it, or do you buy it at Next Chapter? Go to Next Chapter Books and buy it.
There's a discount. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Also, on February 25th, ECN is going to be hosting an exhibit with Hush House. It's going to it's their Black History panels that are all over our walls, and Dr. Charles Simmons, my
journalism, law, and ethics professor at Eastern Michigan University. Ooh. Baba Simmons.
Yes. Baba Simmons is going to be speaking. I'll have a couple things to say, and then we're bringing on one of our Detroit historians, Ken Coleman, to address the community. So it's a Sunday, it's a Monday. I don't know if I get much time off, but I'm really excited about this upcoming week.
All right, y'all. We thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
And the studio audience claps.